Hey guys, welcome back. Today I am fulfilling a request and I am doing a cat deck video because as a crazy cat lady, I probably owe it to the community to show you the cat decks that I actually have in my collection. I currently have 5. Whilst I joke and say that I want all of the cat decks, there are a few cat decks out there that don't really do it for me, but I'm not gonna lie, there are also a few more on my list. We're gonna jump straight into the tarot decks, and this is the first cat deck I ever had, and it is the Mystical Cats Tarot. This is just a deck that I will love forever. If you want a proper review of it, I have done one and I will link it now. You can see that it's very elemental, this deck. They've actually been renamed via the elements, which I prefer. There's just something about that that calls to me. So we've got sea for cups, fire for wands, etc. And again, they've renamed the court cards. We've got kitten for the page, which straight away leaves me thinking of the vulnerable, maybe even sensitive nature of the page, yet their desire to learn, to take in more. They might not do everything without fumbling because it's this new exploratory energy, but as a cat lover that really works. I think that this deck really kind of speaks to you as a cat lover. If you're not and you're just buying a cat deck, maybe the Pagan cats, which is the next one I show, will be a little better. Here we've got the Tom for the night, and again, tomcats. I know not all tomcats are the same, but they do like to mark their territory. They do like to go about and sort of have this exploratory energy, assertive, maybe even aggressive sometimes. And so again, another awesome rename. You've got then the king and queen as usual. Most of these cat decks feel very cat-like to me. This one especially, it really relies on the body language of the cat, the behaviour, the facial expression, all things that as a cat lover will work beautifully for you. There is a little bit of jewellery in the king and queens and maybe the emperor and empress. There's not too many other human elements. Obviously a cat wouldn't ride a chariot pulled by Great Danes, but it's kind of whimsical and sweet. It still feels like it's taking you into a world of cats, and I really enjoy that. It comes with a best book of all of the decks. They both really adore cats. They really take you into their process and into this little world that they've created in the tarot. It's so worth reading, even if you only read it the once. And I think as far as an overall experience, that's the one thing that really puts this cat deck at the top. I've been asked a lot to pick between this and Tarot of Pagan Cats. I have picked, and it always changes, so I've come to the conclusion that they both serve very different purposes for me. They feel very different whilst both being very versatile, and therefore it's really, if you're just looking for one cat deck, what more is your flavour, I guess. This is hilarious. This is the 5 of Cups. This is what I mean. So they're really pulling on how pissed off this cat would be by getting wet, as opposed to sort of having the 5 cups there. And whilst this is very Rider-Waite-Smith, you can see that it tells its own story. It really just reads on everything. It's, as I say, very versatile. I can't express my love for this enough. I love that it's got the whole natural vibe most of the time. They're swiping a mouse whilst the other one's distracted by the birds. There isn't anything that I would change about this deck, really. The aces, they're not my favourites, but I've learnt to love them. There are a few more renames. So for Judgment, we've got the Good Kitty, The guidebook's amazing anyway, so if you were a beginner, you're really held well in the whole experience of this. I love this deck. I don't know what more there is I can say about it. I recognise all of the behaviour going on, and I think that that's what has made it so powerful. Beautiful, beautiful deck. Next up is Tarot of the Pagan Cats, the second cat deck I got. And this one is very Rider-Waite-Smith, aside from a small selection of cards. And what I mean by that is it's very much what you would expect to see in Rider-Waite-Smith cards, but with cats doing it. I guess there's a little bit more of a humanised quality therefore in this. But again, this feels more whimsical. We've got the knight as an example. All of the knights are riding an animal, which, as far as I know, cats don't do this, but what they do when we're not there, who knows? I really enjoy this. It's fun. As I said, it's kind of whimsical. It still feels like something a cat would do if it could get away with it. And more importantly, it really brings in the knight energy still. And the animals that the knights are riding feel very specifically chosen to speak to that element. There's not really many renames in here. We've got the knave instead of the page. You can see you've got some cups and bits and pieces in here. You will see that more in this deck. There are cups, there are pentacles, swords, rather than more of that elemental feel that the Mystic Cat Tarot gave us. But it's not something that bothers me personally. I love the aces because the cats are still in them. That is something that I prefer in this deck. Look how regal the King of Pentacles is. They do really well actually in both decks to kind of give you an age feel of the cat, to show maybe levels of maturity or their positioning. The High Priestess is very regal. The Eight of Wands still has a cat in it, but it's still got that wands movement. So it's really beautiful, but as I say, a bit more Rider-Waite-Smith than the other, which makes up for the fact that the Little White Book isn't fab. It's not a bad one. It would still help. It will still help people to read, but this is what I would now call an old school low Scarabeo deck, in that it is a Little White Book, not the new colourful ones that they're bringing out. It's got a nice little introduction and a couple of spreads. I don't really agree with the view of the court cards, but it is a lovely introduction. And then when you get into the minors especially, there are a sentence or two upright and reversed. It is really tiny. But again, I can't imagine anyone having too much trouble with this. As a cat lover, I would say that this is probably a good beginner's deck. You could get a Rider-Waite-Smith book and still read it with this. It definitely would work. I love the addition of the cat in the moon. Here we've got the Knight of Cups, and so they're riding what appears to be kind of a sea turtle. And again, the cat body language. It really, really is an easy reader. It definitely reads on pretty much everything. And so while someone might not want a relationship reading with cats on it, it's perfectly plausible. Obviously, if you're not a Rider-Waite-Smith fan, this one's going to be a little harder to move away from that than the Mystical Cats Tarot, or the next one that I've got, which is the Last Tarot. But here are some more pictures just really quickly. The cat markings, the artwork, it really, really is incredibly detailed. It's still incredibly moving. It could be that you're just like me and you're not deciding between cat decks at all. You're like, I like that cat deck, and that cat deck, and that cat deck. And you know what? That's okay as well. Whatever floats our boats. No judgment here. So the final and most recently received of my cat decks, which was gifted to me, is the beautiful Considerate Cat Tarot. And you can see that all 3 decks have reversible backs, if that's something that is of interest to you. This one has name changes again, not on the suits, but for the courts we have daughter as a page, son as the knight, and then mother and father. Now, if you're not so into Rider-Waite-Smith, if there are various depictions of cards that feel very much like they constrict your style of reading, for example, and as I say, I'm going to show some, the cards which are like the 10 of Swords and the Rider-Waite-Smith depiction doesn't feel like it speaks to that sense of completion within the mental process that you've gone through consciously. This deck, the Considerate Cat Tarot, is probably going to do it for you a lot more. It's very pippish. I've stopped on this card on purpose. This is the 2 of Cups. Often in Rider-Waite-Smith decks, we'll see 2 people very much either in love or bonding with each other, very close. You kind of get that intimate relationship in whatever capacity it's representing, whereas here there's much more of a pip-like feel. And I think that that's something that some people are going to really, really appreciate. The 6 of Pentacles was another card I purposely put to the front to show you that kind of pippish-like nature. It still weaves a story, but for someone who wants to step away from specific schools of thought in tarot, or even someone who knows the tarot so well, there's still so much to take from these images. They're still very much illustrating a story. It's just not always entirely obvious. And from the book, I still understand this to be quite Rider-Waite-Smith in her meanings. Now, you probably didn't even know I had this deck until today. I wasn't purposefully keeping it a secret. This is made by the lovely Madeline, and it is an indie deck. So there is that. This is an indie deck, you guys. The other 2 are mass market. But this deck is created from such a beautiful passion project that I feel so thankful to have it. As I say, my lovely friend Jenna from Moonlit Fae gifted me this deck, and the reason that I haven't used it too much is because it was just one of those unfortunate things. It was nothing to do with the printing. One of my cards arrived dinged up, and I've had it flattening out and trying to just get it ready for using. I have, however, spent enough time with it to go through it and do this with you guys today. Now, these are mostly rescue cats because that's the reasoning behind this project, and that's why this deck will hold such a special place for me. It's very, very nature and cat based in a similar way to the Mystical Cat Tarot. However, you can see aesthetically it's got a bit of a different vibe to it. It really reminds me of spring. There's a lot of sprouting and growth and blossom throughout this deck. This deck is probably the most gentle in terms of the depictions. If you are not even wanting to see cats with bandages or a bit of a wound, this cat deck is going to be the one for you. And there's an option of 2 different books. You can get the little book, which Madeline kindly added to my friend's package for me because she knew it was for me, and it's got enough information in it. It is fabulous. Or you can get the large book, which I believe has even more information on the rescue cats depicted. So there's something a bit special and a bit different about this deck, because the individual who wrote it, who created the artwork, she is a cat fosterer. She has seen a lot of cats and supported a lot of cats in need. Some of the proceeds go to the charity that she's involved with. And it feels like you see it from this really gentle, loving view that she has of these beautiful cats. I think it's gentle not only by the depictions and the style of artwork, but really because I watched this being made from, I think, the beginning. And I've always felt a really strong connection to the project, to the creator, to what they do. It's just a beautiful deck, and from the readings that I have done, very on point. As I say, as long as you're comfortable with your tarot as a whole, with some of your numerology, that will really come into use here, it'll be a benefit. But of course, she's always got your back with the books if this is more your style and you're new to tarot. Moving into some of the card comparisons, I have tried to go for a better angle for you guys. The lighting is not the best, but hopefully you can see okay, just for this quick purpose, because I know people enjoy comparisons, and I know people are going to be wondering if there's cats impaled. There are no cats impaled by swords in any of these decks. There are cats with natural wounds, there are some bandages, there are some cats fighting, and there is a very, very emotional death card. But obviously all of these things are for you to decide. Just to clarify, we've got the Mystical Cats Tarot, Tarot of Pagan Cats, and then the Considerate Cat Tarot. And remember, I already gave you the heads up that the Considerate Cat Tarot is somewhat more pippish, and if you're feeling called away from the more Rider-Waite-Smith depictions of things like the Three of Swords, the Ten of Swords, the Ten of Wands, then the Considerate Cat Tarot is going to do that a lot better of the three. I personally like the diversity across the board, but then I like having lots of cat decks. Here are the Three of Swords. I told you the Tarot of Pagan Cats was going to be the most Rider-Waite-Smith. You do have the Stabbed Heart. The Three of Swords in the Considerate Cat Tarot really interests me. I love that one cat's leaving and another's staying. There's a lot to be read into that, and that's not what I'm here to do, so I will withhold. But you can also see the cobwebs, and that speaks more to the mind. Cards can be emotional as well as intellectual, but just in terms of opening it up more for something that's not always a physical experience in that way, the Considerate Cat Tarot does it really well. In the Three of Sky, which is the Three of Swords, you can see the cats are actually smashing things, which my cat loves to do, basically being little nuisances. Nine of Swords, I did pick a lot of swords cards. They're the ones that people generally ask about. The Nine of Swords in the Mystical Cats Tarot is hilarious. I can't remember what the other card is, but basically we're seeing a cat having loads of nightmares in this one. There is a card in this deck also where a cat is having, in a very similar position, loads of lovely dreams. And I love that they did that, so that you've got these two opposite cards in the deck. And then we've got Tarot of the Pagan Cats, we've got the swords pointing in, mostly towards the cat, probably the least Rider-Waite-Smith depiction in the deck. And then we've got the Considerate Cat Tarot, which the cat it's got these little bits coming out here where it suggests that it's alert, and whilst it was resting, it's not able to for whatever reason. As promised, the Ten of Swords, no impaled kitties, but I will say, as a cat lover, This Ten of Swords in the Mystical Cats Tarot, it works for me because I encompass the numerology, but I'm not going to lie and say that I am not Rider-Waite-Smith, because I am, and I will tend to go with the flow of my deck. It does still make me feel really sad for this cat, although they're clearly a survivor, but you can see them looking very tender. Very tender. They've got one eye, they've got a couple of scratches on them. Again, the other very non-Rider-Waite-Smith depiction in Tarot of Pagan Cats, but yay. And the Ten of Swords in the Considerate Cat Tarot, which I appreciate. It's, you know, I didn't say it wasn't a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I said it was much more pippish, and whilst it's not completely moved away from the Rider-Waite-Smith, there's nothing impaled. You've got the crossover of the swords, which speak a lot, and really you've just got a very angry cat. So I felt that that opened it up quite a bit, but let me know what you think. Just to give you an idea of a different suit, I've gone for the wands, the 5. You can see in both of these there is cat brawls occurring, and then really interestingly in the Considerate Cat Tarot we've got these plants, and they represent the wands, it seems, throughout, or at least commonly, and they look like they're piercing the paw, or they're basically just getting in the way. But there's a lot that could be read from that 5. I chose this 10 of wands because I felt that it, as an overall, represented the differences between the 3 decks very well. Here we've got the Mystical Cats, very focused on the elemental stuff, so there is fire everywhere. Here we've got the very Rider-Waite-Smith depiction of the cat physically carrying the burden, and here we've got a very peaceful cat, and they are surrounded by wands. You know, all of the 10 speak to completion, but obviously different schools of thought go with that in different capacities, in the ways that they speak about the energy. And across the board, the difference between these 3 10s is the difference in the decks. I picked 3 majors for you as well. The first major is the Death card, and the Mystical Cats Tarot Death card really hits me in the feels. I'm not gonna lie, it's this one, but it doesn't avoid the difficulty. Like, when I see that picture, it brings back very difficult memories as a cat lover. But what's beautiful about it is you've got these sun rays coming down, and these beautiful, it's like it's 9 lives are there, but there's also the suggestion of it either going into the earth or it going up into spirit, however you want to read that. In terms of visually, it is a sad card. These 2 don't bring up much emotionally for me. They work. I find this scientifically interesting. This is really cute, although I feel a bit sorry for the cat because it's black and it's on the Death card, but the High Priestess in this deck is black, so then I think, okay, that's fine. Just because black cats get a bit of a bad run, if you didn't know. These are the Devil cards. I just can't. This one is in my review. You have to see it up close. What the hell is going on? Cat hell sucks, clearly. I've had some funny discussions with people about this card. Whilst it sticks out like a sore thumb in the deck, the artwork doesn't. It flows, and it's just so funny that I love it. That's the only reason. Demon Cat, I'm not loving the rename for that one, but you know, it's doing what cats do. It sucks, but that's what they do. And at one point in their life, when they were wild, they had to do that to survive. So can we really judge them on it? But it brings in a lot of good exploration. And then you can see with the Considerate Cat, there's more of a focus on the symbol above, and these 3 cats, they do appear to have upside down crosses on their heads, which is a great addition to the symbology. But you can see very different across the board. And finally, last but not least, I picked the Tower card because there are cats falling from the tower on 2, and it was just another major to show you guys, to give you an example of the 3 decks. I love that the tower in the Considerate Cat Tarot is an actual cat tower. It doesn't speak to the same energy to me, however, I can work with it totally, and I'm never going to hold anything against that deck because it works for me. But obviously in terms of tower energy, the other 2 depictions are probably a lot more in line with what we're used to seeing. But why not have a cat deck where it represents Kittyland? It would have been interesting to see the cat maybe hooked on the side. My cat likes to Spider-Man up these sometimes, and she thinks she's really clever and she loses her footing, which I know it's not nice to laugh, but she never hurts herself. I would have been interested to see some movement in this one. He's just yelling when he's falling. It's not, I don't know, maybe I've got used to the decks. It doesn't feel too distressing from me. And this one's possibly my favourite because this actually shows the stages of what cats do to their body when they fall. And there's the suggestion that no matter how far you fall, that there'll be a part of you, you know, cats always land on their feet, or at least they're supposed to. I think my cat has broken that rule once, but it speaks to all aspects of that energy. Hopefully that didn't go on too long, but I just thought it would help your exploration of the tarot decks. Moving into cat oracle decks, I've got 2. This one is the gorgeous Cat Gurus. I have indeed reviewed it, and I will link the review above. I am in love with this deck. There is no other way to express it to you. I won't go into these decks as much purely because, I don't know, people seem more open to Oracle because oracles are often their own systems. There's nothing, however, that you need to learn to be able to use this deck. A lot of the cats are cats that have been in history for one reason or another, or they represent people in history. Sometimes they represent cat behaviours. It's really quite playful. You can see they are dressed up in a couple of them. It really is like if cats ruled the world. That's how it kind of feels to me. It's a lovely add-on to a cat tarot reading as a whole if you're using the tarot cards, because you've got the 3 different types of messages. One's more relational. I can't remember what the other 2 are in reference to. Let's have a look. Work and life. But also they tie in very well with each other. In terms of the artwork, it actually reminds me of the Considerate Cat Tarot a little bit. So here you can see we've got Bast. It's hilarious, this deck. Cat Sith. I have not been disappointed with it. The cardstock is fabulous. It is super affordable. You can get this on Amazon. This is clearly Grumpy Cat, but this is it bitch resting face? I can't remember how they've worded this in the book. I mean, we've got an astronaut cat. Providing you like this whimsical touch on them, and I don't know what it is about them, but they don't feel dressed up as if they're humans in the same way to me. That's just me. But, oh dear. This one's got a drinking problem. It is a fantastic cat deck, and it definitely still focuses on the day-to-day life. It's still going to give you a day-to-day message, but it very much is from the cat's kind of view of things. So it might be a little bit more blunt, or it might be a little bit more sassy, or it may even have a cat kind of pun to it, which is fun as well. But don't kind of let it fool you. It can still do serious readings if you want it to. If they give you so much room to work with. The book that comes with it's fab. It doesn't repeat what's on here because we're already seeing that, and I am thankful for that. You do, however, get another little colour picture of just a small one, and then of each cat and card, but the little backstory to who or what they're representing, which feels much more fun to me. And again, it makes it a really nice package as a whole for someone to enjoy. Finally, last but not least, is my gorgeous little spirit cat, and this is an indie deck. I have also reviewed this one very, very recently, and I will link it now at the top. This deck works beautifully as an altar deck. It works beautifully as one that you can just pick a card visually and then take in the message, or you can shuffle and then see what card you pull. You can see that the pictures are very focused on what the cat's doing. The colour energy is very, very specifically chosen, I feel. And that makes it easier to read than you would imagine, in terms of before you look at the back, getting an overall energy for the cat. But there's no right or wrong way. It doesn't come with a book, but it really doesn't feel like you're missing anything. You get introduced to the cat as well as the keyword on the back. So here, this cat's called Salmon, the keyword's wild, and then it starts talking about how his limitless abandon and his behaviour all bring in the message of the wild for you. And they often give you ideas to prompt you in how you can engage with this energy, how you could journal it, how you could be aware of it if it's already there. It is an incredibly versatile deck, and because it's got so many colours in it, it works with so many decks. It really does. I have used this oracle deck probably with the most of my tarot decks in one go. You can see that in this deck, which is the only one like this, the cats aren't necessarily, I don't want to say realistic because that sounds like it's taking something away from it. And some of them are very realistic, but they're almost like these fae versions of cat spirit or cat energy. They've got these kind of whimsical extra little bits, and you can see some of them are fire red and some of them are purple, whereas then we've got what we would maybe consider a bit more of a realistic looking breed here. But I like that about them. It brings something different to my cat collection that I otherwise wouldn't have. And because of that, I do use these two cat oracles together as well. They work beautifully together. I freaking love this deck, and I'm so glad to have both of them. I hope this was fun for you guys, because in truth, that's all it was meant to be. I made no notes for this video, and I appreciate that means that I might talk about an aspect of one deck, but not have compared it to another. But really, I just wanted to give you a bit of an insight into how I use them, why they bring me joy. If you've got any questions of anything that I missed, or for some reason I just didn't quite make sense, it's possible. Let me know down below and I'll be happy to talk cat decks with you. Thank you, cat fans, and just anyone else who's watching, even if you're not a cat fan. And I will say goodbye from myself, and of course, as it is cat deck video, a goodbye from Zuri as well.